What happens when a morning television interview goes from pleasant conversation to complete chaos? In just 36 seconds, one comment would turn a friendly chat into one of the most shocking moments ever broadcast on live television. Good Morning America had seen thousands of celebrity interviews. Michael Strahan had sat across from movie stars, politicians, athletes, and members of royal families. He knew how to make guests feel comfortable. He knew how to ask the right questions. He knew how to keep conversations flowing smoothly. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold on this particular morning. The studio lights were bright and warm. The cameras were rolling. The audience at home was settling in with their coffee, expecting another typical morning show segment. Meghan Markle walked onto the set with confidence. She was there to discuss her latest projects and share updates about her life. The interview was supposed to last 12 minutes. It would not make it past 7. Michael stood up to greet her with his signature smile. "Welcome, welcome. It's so great to have you here with us this morning," he said warmly. They shook hands and took their seats. The small talk began easily enough. He asked about her flight to New York. She mentioned the traffic getting to the studio. Standard opening banter. Everything seemed perfectly normal. "So let's dive right in," Michael said, leaning forward slightly. "You've been working on some really exciting projects lately. Can you tell our viewers what you've been up to?" Meghan shifted in her chair. "Well, Michael, I've been incredibly busy. You know, when you're someone like me, someone who has lived the life I've lived, you have certain responsibilities. Important responsibilities that other people simply wouldn't understand." Michael nodded politely. "Absolutely. And I know our audience would love to hear more about those projects specifically." "I'm getting to that," she said, holding up one hand. "You see, the thing is, not everyone has the platform I have. Not everyone has the influence. And with that influence comes the need to be very selective about what I attach my name to." "Of course," Michael replied, maintaining his professional demeanor. "So, what have you selected to work on recently?" She paused, looking directly at the camera instead of at Michael. "I've been in discussions with several major organizations. Very major organizations. The kind that only reach out to people of a certain caliber. I really can't go into specifics because these things are highly confidential. But I can say that the work I'm doing is groundbreaking." Michael tried to redirect. "That sounds interesting. Maybe we can talk about some of your past work then? I know you've been involved in various charitable initiatives." "Charitable?" She repeated the word as if it tasted bitter. "Michael, what I do goes far beyond charity. Charity is what regular people do when they want to feel good about themselves. What I do is create actual change. Real, meaningful change that affects millions of lives." There was a slight tension in the air now. The crew behind the cameras exchanged quick glances. Michael, ever the professional, smiled and tried again. "Well, I think our viewers would love to hear about some specific examples of that change." Meghan crossed her legs and leaned back. "You know what, Michael? This is exactly the problem with interviews like this. Everyone wants to put you in a box. Everyone wants you to perform like a trained SEAL. Jump through hoops. Give them sound bites they can clip and share." "I apologize if it came across that way," Michael said calmly. "I'm genuinely interested in hearing about your work. That's why we invited you here." "Invited me?" She raised her eyebrows. "Let's be clear about something. Your producers called my team multiple times. Multiple times. They were practically begging for me to come on this show. So let's not pretend this was some casual invitation." Michael maintained his composure beautifully. "We're certainly grateful you're here. We always enjoy having interesting guests who can share their experiences with our audience." "Interesting guests," she repeated. "Is that what I am to you? Just another interesting guest? Do you have any idea who you're sitting across from right now?" "Of course I do," Michael replied gently. you're Meghan Markle, and we're very happy to have you here to discuss your current projects. She laughed, but it was not a warm sound. My current projects. You keep saying that like it's so simple. Like I can just rattle off a list for you and your viewers. Do you know how many projects I have going on simultaneously? Do you have any concept of how many people depend on me? I'm sure it's quite a lot, Michael said, and I'd love to hear about even just one or two of them if you'd like to share. If I'd like to share, she said mockingly. Michael, I came here as a favor to this show, a favor to you, and all I'm getting are these basic, surface-level questions that I could answer in my sleep. Michael took a breath. What kind of questions would you prefer to answer? Questions that matter, she said immediately. Questions about the real issues. Questions about the challenges I face every single day. Questions about what it's like to be me in a world that is constantly judging, constantly criticizing, constantly trying to tear me down. Those sound like important topics, Michael agreed. Let's talk about that then. What are some of the biggest challenges you're facing right now? She stared at him for a moment. Are you serious right now? You're really asking me that? After everything that's been in the news, after everything that's been written about me, you're asking me what challenges I'm facing. I am, Michael said simply. I think our viewers would appreciate hearing it directly from you in your own words. Your viewers, she said with clear disdain. Let me tell you something about your viewers, Michael. Most of them are sitting at home in their pajamas, eating their cereal, living their small, ordinary lives. They tune into shows like this because they want a glimpse into the lives of people who actually matter. People like me. The atmosphere in the studio had shifted dramatically. Michael's co-hosts, sitting nearby, looked uncomfortable. The camera operators kept filming, knowing this was becoming something extraordinary. I think that's a bit unfair, Michael said, his voice still calm but firmer now. Our viewers are good people from all walks of life who tune in to start their day with some news and entertainment. Entertainment, she scoffed. That's what I am to you. Entertainment. Something to fill time between your weather forecasts and your cooking segments. That's not what I said, Michael corrected her gently. You're a guest on our show, and we treat all our guests with respect, just as we'd hope they'd treat us with respect. Respect? Her voice rose slightly. You want to talk to me about respect. Do you know what it's like to have your every move analyzed, your every word twisted, your every decision questioned by people who have never walked a single step in your shoes? I can imagine that must be very difficult, Michael replied. But I think many people face criticism in their lives, even if it's not on the same scale. She pointed a finger at him. Don't you dare compare my experience to regular people. Don't you dare minimize what I go through. You have absolutely no idea what it's like to be at my level, dealing with the things I deal with. You're right, Michael said. I don't know exactly what your experience is like. That's why I'm asking you about it. That's why we're having this conversation. This isn't a conversation, she snapped. This is an interrogation. You're sitting there with your little questions, trying to make me dance for your audience. Well, I don't dance for anyone, Michael. Not anymore. Michael glanced at the producers off camera, but he continued professionally. I'm sorry you feel that way. That was never the intention. We simply wanted to give you a platform to share whatever you wanted to share. A platform? She laughed again, that same cold laugh. I don't need your platform. I have my own platform. I have millions of followers. I have direct access to more people than this show will ever reach. Then why did you agree to come on? Michael asked, a reasonable question posed in a reasonable tone. The question seemed to catch her off guard for just a second. Then her face hardened. I told you, as a favor, because my team thought it would be good to remind people that I'm still relevant, still out here doing important work. But clearly, this was a mistake. I don't think it was a mistake, Michael said kindly. I think we just got off on the wrong foot. Why don't we start Over? Take a breath, and let's have a real conversation. A real conversation? She looked at him incredulously. Michael, you wouldn't know a real conversation if it hit you in the face. You're a talk show host. You read off teleprompters and smile for the cameras. You're not equipped to have a real conversation with someone like me. The insult hung in the air. Michael's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained even. I've had real conversations with presidents, world leaders, Olympic athletes, and people from every background imaginable. I think I can handle a conversation with you. Handle me. She stood up abruptly. Handle me? Did you just say, you can handle me? That's not what I meant, Michael said, also standing. I meant I'm capable of having a meaningful conversation. No, she said, pointing at him again. You said handle. Like I'm some kind of problem that needs to be managed. Like I'm difficult. Is that what you think? That I'm difficult? I think we're having a miscommunication, Michael tried to explain. We're not having a miscommunication, she shot back. We're having a situation where you clearly don't respect me, clearly don't value my time, and clearly don't understand who you're dealing with. I absolutely respect you, Michael insisted, but respect goes both ways. You've made several comments this morning that have been pretty insulting, not just to me, but to our viewers. Insulting? She looked genuinely shocked that he would push back. I'm insulting? I'm the one being insulted here. I'm the one being treated like some kind of circus act. Nobody is treating you that way, Michael said firmly. We invited you here for a straightforward interview. You're the one who's turned this into something else. Her eyes flashed with anger. How dare you? How dare you speak to me like that? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I've been through? I've dealt with things that would break most people. I've survived situations that you couldn't even imagine. I'm sure you have, Michael said, and I'm sorry for whatever difficulties you've faced, but that doesn't give you the right to come onto this show and be disrespectful to everyone here. Disrespectful? She was almost shouting now. I'll tell you what's disrespectful. What's disrespectful is inviting someone of my stature onto your show and then treating them like they're nobody. What's disrespectful is asking vapid, meaningless questions. What's disrespectful is wasting my time with this nonsense. If you feel that way, you're certainly free to leave, Michael said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Oh, I'm free to leave? She grabbed her purse from beside the chair. You're giving me permission to leave? How gracious of you, Michael. How incredibly gracious. That's not what I meant, he tried again. I don't care what you meant, she said loudly. I care about what you said. And what you said was that I'm free to leave your precious show, like you're doing me some kind of favor by releasing me from this torture. Michael took a deep breath. I think maybe we both need to take a step back here. Don't tell me what I need to do, she snapped. You don't get to tell me anything. You're just a host. You're just someone who asks questions for a living. I'm someone who actually makes a difference in the world. Lots of people make a difference in the world, Michael replied. In lots of different ways. Not like me, she insisted. Not on my level. Not with my impact. And certainly not people like you who sit in comfortable studios asking softball questions. Michael's expression had shifted from patient to something closer to disappointment. I've always tried to be fair and respectful to every guest who comes on this show. I've never had an interview go this way before. Maybe that's because you've never had a guest who was willing to call you out, she said. Maybe everyone else was just too polite, too afraid to tell you the truth. Well, I'm not afraid. I'm not going to sit here and pretend everything is fine when it clearly isn't. What isn't fine? Michael asked. Specifically, what exactly has gone so wrong here? She threw up her hands. Everything. Everything about this is wrong. The questions, the tone, the complete lack of understanding about who I am and what I represent. Help me understand then, Michael offered one more time. Tell me what you want to talk about. I don't want to talk about anything anymore, she declared. Not with you. Not on this show. This was clearly a terrible idea from the beginning. I'm sorry you feel that way, Michael said sincerely. Stop apologizing, she practically yelled. Stop being so fake polite. Just admit that this was a disaster and let me leave. Michael stood very still. You're absolutely right that this hasn't gone the way any of us hoped. And yes, you're free to go whenever you want. You always were. There you go again with that tone, she said. That condescending, patronizing tone like you're talking to a child. I'm not trying to be condescending, Michael said, his exhaustion with the situation finally showing. I'm trying to end this conversation on a civil note. Civil? She grabbed her bag more tightly. There's nothing civil about this. There's nothing civil about how I've been treated here today. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows about it. That's your right, Michael said simply. She stared at him, seeming almost disappointed that he wasn't engaging in a bigger fight. You know what your problem is, Michael. Your problem is that you think you're better than everyone else. You think because you have this show, because you have these cameras, that you're somehow important. I've never thought that, Michael replied quietly. I'm just a guy who's lucky enough to have a job he loves, talking to interesting people. Well, you failed today, she said coldly. You failed at making me feel welcome. You failed at asking intelligent questions. You failed at basic human decency. Michael didn't respond to that. He simply stood there, maintaining his dignity, while she continued. I came here in good faith, she went on. I came here willing to share my story, my experiences, my wisdom. And what did I get? Nothing. Absolutely nothing but disrespect and disappointment. I'm sorry you see it that way, Michael said once more. Of course you are, she said sarcastically. You're sorry about everything, aren't you? So sorry. So apologetic. So perfect. Well, let me tell you something. Your apologies mean nothing. They're empty words from an empty person. That last comment seemed to cross a line. Michael's expression hardened slightly. I think it's time for you to go. Oh, now you're telling me to leave? She looked triumphant, as if she'd been waiting for this. Now you're throwing me off your show? How predictable. How typical. I'm not throwing you off, Michael clarified. I'm simply agreeing with you that this interview should end. Because you can't handle me, she said with satisfaction. Because I'm too real for you. Too honest. Too willing to speak truth to power. Because this has become unproductive and uncomfortable for everyone involved, Michael corrected her. She shouldered her bag and looked directly into the camera. Let everyone watching know what happened here today. Let them know that when someone dares to speak their mind, when someone refuses to play the game, this is what happens. They get silenced. They get pushed out. Nobody is silencing you, Michael said tiredly. You've been speaking quite freely this entire time. And now you're making me leave, she said. You said you wanted to leave, Michael reminded her. Multiple times. Because you made it impossible to stay. Her voice was rising again. Because you created an environment that was hostile and unwelcoming. Michael looked at her steadily. I think we have very different perspectives on what happened here this morning. Of course we do, she said. Because you're delusional. You're living in some fantasy world where you think you did nothing wrong. I tried my best to conduct a respectful interview, Michael stated. I'm sorry it didn't meet your expectations. Your best wasn't good enough, she said sharply. Not even close, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. That's your choice, Michael replied. She turned and started walking toward the exit. Then she stopped and turned back one more time. You know what the saddest part is, Michael? The saddest part is that you had a chance. You had a chance to do something meaningful here today. You had a chance to have a real conversation with someone who has actually lived through extraordinary things, and you blew it. Michael didn't take the bait. He simply said, I hope the rest of your day is better than this morning has been. She made a disgusted sound and shook her head. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Then she looked at the crew members standing nearby. I hope you all got this on camera. I hope you recorded every single second of how your host treats his guests. One of the producers stepped forward. Ma'am, maybe we could... Don't, she cut him off. Don't try to smooth this over. Don't try to pretend like everything is fine. It's not fine. It's the opposite of fine. Michael remained standing by his chair, watching this all unfold with a mixture of professionalism and clear disappointment. This was not how he ran his show. This was not how interviews were supposed to go. But he maintained his composure throughout, never raising his voice, never losing his cool. She adjusted her bag one more time and gave everyone in the studio a withering look. This is exactly why I preferred doing my own content. At least there, I have control. At least there, I'm treated with the respect I deserve. I wish you all the best with that, Michael said, and he meant it without a trace of sarcasm. I don't need your wishes, she replied. I don't need anything from you, or this show, or anyone here. I'm perfectly fine on my own. I'm sure you are, Michael said. She started walking toward the exit again, her heels clicking loudly on the studio floor. Everyone watched in stunned silence. This was unprecedented. This was not something that happened on morning television. Guests didn't storm off sets. Interviews didn't implode like this. Just before she reached the door, she turned around one final time. And for the record, Michael, you're nowhere near as charming as you think you are. You're just another talking head, reading lines, collecting a paycheck. There's nothing special about you. Michael took a slow breath. I never claimed to be special. I just try to do my job well. Well, you failed today, she said again. Spectacular failure. Remember that. And with that, she pushed through the studio door and was gone. The door swung shut behind her with a decisive click. The studio remained silent for several long seconds. Nobody seemed to know quite what to do or say. Michael finally sat back down in his chair and looked directly at the camera. His professionalism kicked back in immediately. Well, he said with a small, rueful smile, that was certainly unexpected. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the rest of our show. He maintained his dignity right through to the commercial break. He didn't badmouth his guest. He didn't make excuses. He simply acknowledged what everyone had just witnessed and moved forward. Behind the scenes, the crew was buzzing. Producers were on their phones. Directors were replaying footage. Everyone knew they had just captured something that would be talked about for years to come. This was the kind of television moment that becomes legendary, that gets replayed and analyzed and discussed endlessly. When the show came back from commercial, Michael addressed what happened with grace and class. Look, sometimes interviews don't go as planned, he said to the camera. That's live television, but we respect everyone who comes on our show, and we wish them well. He didn't dwell on it. He didn't turn it into a bigger spectacle than it already was. He simply moved on to the next segment, proving once again why he was so respected in the industry. He knew how to handle difficult situations. He knew how to maintain professionalism, even when others lost theirs. The interview, or rather the spectacular implosion of the interview, would be clipped and shared millions of times. People would analyze every word, every expression, every moment of tension. They would debate who was right and who was wrong. They would create memes and commentary videos. They would discuss it on social media for days and weeks. But in the moment, in the studio, Michael simply did what he always did. He showed up, he treated people with respect, and he continued with his job. Even when that respect was not returned, even when things went completely off the rails, even when a guest decided to turn a simple interview into a dramatic confrontation, That's what separated true professionals from those who simply played one on television. Michael had spent years building a reputation as someone who could handle any situation with grace and dignity. And even in this bizarre, uncomfortable, unprecedented situation, he proved why he deserved that reputation. The whole thing had lasted less than 7 minutes. 7 minutes that felt like an hour. 7 minutes that produced enough drama for an entire season of television. 7 minutes that showed the stark difference between someone who understood professionalism and someone who believed the rules didn't apply to them. As the show continued, Michael interviewed other guests, discussed the news, bantered with his co-hosts, and did everything he normally did. He didn't let one difficult interaction derail the entire morning. He didn't let one person's behavior define the show. That was the real story. Not just that a guest had behaved badly, but that a host had handled it with such consistent grace. Not just that an interview had gone wrong, but that a professional had managed the situation without losing his composure or his kindness. Michael Strahan had faced down some of the toughest athletes in professional football during his playing days. He had handled high-pressure situations countless times, but this morning had tested him in a different way. And he had passed that test with flying colors. The cameras kept rolling. The show went on. And somewhere, a former guest was probably still fuming about perceived slights and manufactured insults. But in the studio, everyone knew they had witnessed something remarkable. Not remarkable because of the drama, but remarkable because of how it was handled. That's what people would remember when they looked back on this moment. Not just the spectacle of someone storming off a set, but the steady, calm, professional response from a host who refused to sink to that level, who refused to engage in a shouting match, who refused to compromise his values or his dignity. It was a masterclass in professionalism, a lesson in how to handle difficult people and difficult situations, a reminder that sometimes the best response to chaos is simply to remain calm and carry on. The morning sun continued to shine through the studio windows. The cameras continued to capture every moment, and Michael Strahan continued to do what he did best, showing up every day and treating his job, his colleagues, and his audience with respect and professionalism.